So good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us for a conversation with the curators and designers behind Artists and Models, a tribute to the Southside Community Arts Center. My name is Melanie Chambliss. I'm an assistant professor at Columbia, and I'll be moderating today's conversation. So Artists and Models celebrates the Southside Community Arts Center's pioneering role in promoting Black art and creativity in Chicago. This exhibition came about because the center's administrative records are currently and temporarily being housed at Columbia, and they graciously allowed us to work with the material. So we had direct access, even in the midst of the pandemic, to so many incredible records. And so this panel is now our opportunity to hear from the student curators, designers, and contributors who brought this exhibition to life. Before we get started, just to go over today's Zoom protocol, this panel is being recorded. It will be available on the DEPS, or Columbia's Department of Exhibition, Performances, and Student Spaces, and on their YouTube page at some point in the near future. So you can also put your questions in the chat throughout the panel, but we will take questions from the audience towards the end. So that said, I can now introduce our incredible panel. First, we have Charlotte Briskin, who is a sophomore fine arts major here at Columbia, as well as Anastasia Murphy, who is a senior photography major. They were both in my Black Artistry in the Archive class last semester, and they are representing the curators of the exhibition. Anastasia was also the student intern for Artists and Models, so she was very involved and very instrumental in helping that original vision to become a reality. We also have Elliott and Raegan Townsend, who are both senior graphic design majors. They are currently enrolled in Sarah Faust's graphic design practicum, and they will talk about their experience designing the exhibition. And as I said before, even though the title is Curators and Designers for the panel, in reality, we're talking to the curators, designers, and contributors to the exhibition, which includes Oiku Kola, a senior art history major who is enrolled in Amy Mooney's written thesis class this semester. Professor Mooney's class collaboratively wrote the incredible artist profiles for both Margaret Burroughs and Barbara Jones Hogu. And then last but not least is Jocelyn Brown, a senior fashion merchandising major who was the student intern who curated the looks for the gallery windows of C33 to match the different time periods for the recreated gallery scene from the first floor of the Southside Community Arts Center. So for the full list of students who were involved in the exhibition, those names are available on the DEPS website. And so if Meg Dugood, who's kind of operating in the background, if you can drop that link into the chat for where people can access that full list of students. But for today's panel, we will be hearing in order, or in the order that I expressed, the curators, designers, and then contributors, followed by the Q&A. So first to the students, thank you all for agreeing to participate on the panel. We can get started with Charlotte and Anastasia as the curators. Can you talk a little bit about what you knew about the Southside Community Arts Center prior to last semester? And if there was a particular moment or a set of documents or material that really helped you to understand the center's significance or its meaning or legacy?
I can go first. So I didn't know much about the Southside Community Arts Center before the class, and I feel like going into it with a blank slate made just everything a little bit more inspirational, like it was all new information. So I feel like I had a lot of those moments where it just, it was connecting with me, like how involved the center was with the community and the city. And then I had my moment where I realized that Gordon Parks was related to the center, and I didn't realize that. So I feel like I already kind of had been touched by the center without realizing it, because as a photographer, I'm a big fan of his work. So it just made me realize like the relevance of the center, like how it has kind of gone through the decades for me.
I also did not know anything about the Southside Community Arts Center prior to last semester, and it was really incredible to learn about it. The archives were really incredible, getting to see everyone's handwriting from back then. I think the document that helped me understand the center the best was the Mile of Dimes documents that we read about, how they fundraised for the center. They collected a mile's worth of dimes, and it was really cool to learn about that.
Definitely looking at whether it's the people who have been impacted by it or the ways in which they were able to sustain the center, like all of those things can definitely help you to appreciate like why the Southside Community Arts Center has mattered, why it continues to matter. So can you both explain how you all approached curating the exhibition and what elements or items either you or your class, the classmates, really wanted to include to represent this history?
Definitely. So basically, we were covering 4 decades, and we split those 4 decades into 2 teams to kind of break apart the research aspect. So me and Charlotte were on the same team, where we were diving into the Black Chicago Renaissance, and then the other and that was for the 1930s to 1950s. And then for the second portion of the exhibit, they're working on the Black arts movement, and we refer to them as Team like Cobra, like Afro Cobra. Um, and yeah, I feel like for at least our portion, we tried to find the themes that we associated like with the center through looking through the archives and like just doing the research. So our main themes in the beginning were resilience, relevance, and resistance, and that kind of guided how we approached our section. And I feel like that was important for the beginning of the process.
We were also really inspired by our visit to the Southside Community Arts Center, getting to see the artwork that was there, feeling the aura of it was really amazing. And we took the inspiration of the wood panels from the center that you can see in the exhibit.
Yeah, no, definitely looking at the different ways in which memory can be preserved. Like it was wonderful the way in which the wood paneling was able to be incorporated. So those are great elements to be able to emphasize. So then the last question for the curators, now that you've seen the final exhibition, like it moved from your original ideas to the final show, are there any favorite parts that you have to the show or new elements that you feel like really complemented or elevated your original ideas?
I'm curious to hear what Charlotte has to say first.
I love the map that we did, that Anastasia took took the forefront doing. It really shows the reach of the center. I really like the community engagement wall too, and I think expanding on that would be really cool too.
I also enjoyed the process of the correspondence map. That was one of the things that I was really involved with from the beginning, like just seeing that the evolution of it from like just, okay, this is an idea, like we'll see how this goes, to like we'll figure it out, to I had to actually figure it out and actually do all the strings, which was very tedious but worth it because I feel like it turned out really good in the end, so it was worth all the work. But I also really appreciated the artist profiles and how they ended up, and I loved the pieces that we ended up having for that part. Just I liked all of the little like evidence of personal touches when it came to the archival documents. So like seeing that in the end in the cases is really nice. Overall, and the design too, I have to acknowledge that because the design team was amazing, and the way that they took the ideas and brought them to life, and like just the logo, how it turned out, I think was amazing.
No, I think that's a great transition point to be able to kind of welcome the designers into the conversation. But I did want to be able to show a couple of images just to kind of show the difference between the planning process, like where things ended fall semester, and where the design team picked up and really like elevated the ideas or the inkling of the ideas that we had, as Anastasia said. So I can really quickly share that screen. And so for the students, where it was Team Renaissance and Team Cobra, they put together these final presentations. And I know this image might be a little blurry, but I can scroll to the next one where you can see them kind of laying out like, okay, this is this person's wall. This is going to be what this section is focused on, whether it's the correspondence map, the community engagement wall, the idea of the mannequins and the gallery scene on the windows, and then how even some thoughts about the wall design, like what themes do we want, what artists do we want to represent, and what items, the captions for it, like some of those were being chosen and curated and drafted during the first part of the exhibition. including, as Anastasia said, the kind of early ideas of what this map could look like, what the community engagement wall could look like, what it looked like to be able to represent some of the differences between the different time periods. And so it was part of the final presentation, it was part of a recording that they then left for the spring semester students. And so it was the graphic design practicum team that kind of took all of those ideas. And then if you had a chance to see the final exhibition, or if you didn't, like, this is the final product where you can see some of the shapes and the patterns, the correspondence map. In the background, you can see the artist profile from Margaret Burroughs, and it was the written thesis class that chose both of the artwork in addition to writing the profiles. You know, you can see like so many different elements that went into the execution of those ideas, and it just really blended really well the thinking that students had, including the wood paneling that Charlotte was talking about, and the designers working so hard to figure out how do we get that paneling just right, and then the fantastic fashion choices that Jocelyn pulled, like the way in which everyone worked together. Hopefully that gives you a sense of the visuals behind the exhibition as well. So with that being said, hopefully that's a useful transition between like the ideas that the curators had and then what the designers were able to do during the spring semester that really made the exhibition like as amazing as it was. So for Bree and Raegan, so you all had, or your team had the challenge of contributing the work and ideas of another class, as well as representing a historic.
Also, we don't teach 24/7.
Hold on. Okay, there it goes. As well as inheriting the ideas of another class, representing a historic institution, and then designing an exhibition for the very first time. So if you can talk a little about how you managed each of these challenges.
Sure, I'll start. I think the toughest part for me personally was integrating the representation of the center because I didn't know anything about it at all. So that was probably the biggest challenge, but inheriting the design directions, that kind of worked out really well because we initially started by noting all of the most important aspects of the other students' designs and then overall themes, and then we began to build off that.
Yeah, I definitely agree with Bree in that the most difficult part was like accurately representing the center. But I found all of these challenges that we were faced with to be really beneficial from an educational standpoint. I definitely enjoyed having like these kind of set rules that we needed to follow and kind of solving the challenge of working with the students' ideas and also finding a way to represent the center itself.
So the class that you were a part of was a senior graphic design practicum, which was taught by Sarah Faust, who's also in the audience. But so this exhibition was kind of the culmination of your years at Columbia. How do you think your training as graphic designers prepared you to design an exhibition as this like 3D experiential space with all these different elements?
So for me, one of the things, I've been at Columbia for all 4 years of my education, and one of the things that they've been in the graphic design major, they've been pushing since like my freshman year was to understand the way space and form interact with one another. So I definitely think having that understanding of the way the form is interacting with the space really helped me kind of approach this because I had never worked with a 3D space before. So really being trained in that kind of understanding of space was really helpful, and it really prepared me for this project.
That's definitely true. They are very adamant about understanding three-dimensional space because we're so used to looking at everything in 2D, and in the real world, you know, a lot of the things we design are physical. So I agree, yeah, definitely with what Raegan said. Last semester, I also had a typography class, and we had a small exhibition project. So I actually got to do maybe like an eighth of what I did for this. But so I had like a little bit of experience.
Yeah, no, but it's interesting to think how there has to be that extra reminder of what it takes to then take the idea and move it into the real world. But it's great that there had been that opportunity for, whether it's practice it before, at least have those lessons or those ideas introduced to you all, because you all did a fantastic job of moving it from the idea space into that 3D realm. So then the last question that I had for the designers was if you could talk about some of your favorite elements or details to the exhibition, perhaps ones that visitors might not initially notice.
My favorite element is the most obvious. That's just the truth. The title is my very favorite part. But something that's more of a detail, I really love the time period fashion choices in the windows. It was very accurate. They were so beautiful. That was really well done. That, and then I believe Charlotte mentioned hand drawing, and I think a lot of the objects that were shown in the exhibition, a lot of posters came from the earlier Artists and Models Ball when it first started, and they're all hand drawn, and it's really, really unique, and it's nice to see.
I think my favorite part that somebody might not notice is the wooden title treatment that me, Bree, and Joe created. I was lucky enough to have my design chosen for the title treatment, and I just thought that alone was really exciting, and then to get to put it together like with our hands was really great, especially this semester or last few semesters. Everything has been so digital and like so at home, and so to get to go on a campus and really get together and build something, like put something together that is so detailed, was really exciting, and I'm very proud of how it turned out. We all put a lot of work into measuring and leveling it and making sure that it looked perfect up on the wall. So that's definitely my favorite part.
And there was also the additional question of how exactly do we mount it to the wall. So that was like all of the problem solving that went into taking the idea and then making it real. But it turned out incredible with what they were able to do with the laser cutter. All right, so thank you to the designers for kind of giving those introductory comments, of sharing your process for working with the exhibition. Lastly, for the conversation with the contributors, if Oiku, can you explain how you and your classmates, or talk a little bit about your research process in recovering Barbara Jones Hogu and Margaret Burroughs' stories and interpreting their art for the exhibition?
Yeah, the whole approach to the project actually started in fall 2020 with Professor Mooney's art discourse and research class. We as students did extensive research on the center's archives, which gave us the opportunity to find out more about the mission and the artists that worked with the center. And the researching on the history of the center gave me a lot of guidance on how I went on to recover the stories and interpret the artworks. The relationship between the Southside Community Arts Center and the artist, I realized, had an incredible impact on how I view the pieces themselves. And with the extended research, I made sure to read many articles on the artist and the artist's approach, but I also made sure to consider how each detail they used had an impact on the overall story they wanted to tell, whether it was their choice of medium, colors, symbolic details, and many more that came with it. And in some instances, we also found interviews and direct quotes from the artists themselves, which helped us learn more about their thought process and what they wanted to convey with the pieces. So there was definitely a great source when it came to writing the labels for the exhibit. And I think you asked the most important takeaways.
Yeah, that was going to be
for the viewing.
But it sounds like you got it.
Yes, it's just, I think this exhibition and the center itself has always, the center itself has been an incredible source that represents this incredibly diverse personal and public narratives about Chicago. And it has also helped define the city's pivotal decades within history. And I think the center itself is a living testimony that shows that the African American community in the world, the power of dedication and hard work.
Yeah, and definitely the appreciation for it, because the relationship between the artists who are working there and those who like then turn back around and give back to the center what they've been given, like all of those things are definitely a part of why that center matters. And it's great that you were able to see that and interpret that and communicate that in the artist profile. All right, so last question, or last person then, for Jocelyn. Can you discuss your process in trying to connect the three looks in the gallery windows to the exhibition, as opposed to the other classes, or as opposed to the other students who are working in a class? You were kind of working on your own as a student intern. And so if you could talk a little bit more about how you tried to figure out how to embody or how to represent these two different eras.
So my first step was just a little preliminary research on the Southside Community Arts Center, because I wasn't familiar with it. So I was able to visit the school archive, which was really cool, which I had never been to before. I was able to visit there and see the stuff there. And also the Chicago Defender really helped me as well too. So I was able to just kind of get a vibe of what the types of people who visited the community arts center would have been, and that really helped me as well. Working by myself as an intern in the collection is like what I do all the time. So as far as like what we do here is really research based, so it wasn't really much different from what I do at work. But when it came to actually picking the garments, I started with our decade racks in our vault, which is where we house like 6,000 garments that the school has for research. So I started in the decade racks, and they're just separated by different decades. So I kind of just went through there, and with the imagery that I chose from the Chicago Defender and the stuff that I seen in the archive, I just kind of got an image of who the person would be that was visiting the museum. And I kind of just chose off of that. And I wanted to um, kind of make three different people in a sense, and not just kind of stick to one. So I think that the looks that were chosen did a really good job of choosing three different types of people and really embodying those specific decades that they chose. And I was also really excited to do that because fashion history doesn't necessarily show a lot of the fashion history on bodies of color. So it's really cool to go in depth and look at how people of color over the decades have expressed themselves through fashion.
And as Bree said, you did a great job of really capturing that. Like, one of the things I said to you when you sent some of the looks was that you really did a great job of showing the class tension that was there, like the lady with the fur versus the women who had more of a house dress, and so all of those things were really great elements. The other thing that I was going to say is that Jocelyn is in the fashion studies collection room right now, so you can kind of see the rack in the background. But my next question for you was kind of tied to what you were talking about being able to study fashion history and even reflect on the intersection between fashion history, either African American history, African American culture. But I wanted to know, what do you think is unique about fashion as a way to represent the past or preserve memory? How is it different from some of the other ways that we tried to present this history in the exhibition?
I personally believe that fashion is one of the most unique ways that we represent history, because I don't think that people necessarily consider it as that, because fashion is a choice that we have to make every day. We have to get dressed. So we don't necessarily think about it beyond the surface level. So when you think about it beyond the surface level, for me, fashion is um, the embodiment and all of the little intricate details that go into those moments that the pieces in the exhibition captured. So what was the weather that day? How was the person feeling? All of those different things. Fashion is what captures those really, really small memories.
Yeah, But those small details can be some of the things that can be so telling, whether it's the hand drawings in the posters or the details of what someone chooses to accessorize with, like the very fact that all of those things, like the investment in the details was really nice about whether it's recovering history or the work that all of you all did. All right, so thank you for taking the time to kind of answer those introductory kind of questions. I saw someone had put into the chat that it was beautifully said, Jocelyn, your comment, but everyone, the ways in which you all have been reflecting on your work has just been amazing. So I wanted to open the floor to any questions that people might have about their work or things that have been said. And we might even have some questions already going. I can check the chat, but if not, you can feel free to kind of post any additional thoughts. All right. Let's see. So this is more of a shout out from Lauren Peters, who is the director over the Fashion Studies collection. And so she says, I just want to shout out some other amazing fashion research that Jocelyn currently has displayed on campus. She researched skate culture and style in African-American communities, and she has a look and some writing currently on display in the 618 South Michigan Avenue windows. So that's an additional shout out for Jocelyn. So thank you for that. All right, any additional questions or comments? Well, one way, as we're kind of waiting for maybe some more questions from the chat, were there any questions that you all wanted to ask each other? So this is less of a prepared moment, but things that you either wanted to know or maybe things that you wanted to compliment in what you saw or the way in which the exhibition came together, or any other thoughts, like now that we've kind of heard from everyone. And so that's to the panelists. All right, if not, we do have one question from the chat now. So Meg Dugood is asking, can you all elaborate on the array of items in the show? It really is stunning, and I think many might like to hear about what is there. So that's a great question.
Well, just off the top of my head, I was thinking of the fact that there were actual like class schedules and event schedules that showed like the different kinds of clubs and just like different community things that were held in the center. And I feel like that gave a little bit of an insight on just the different like day-to-day activities and like how they connected with the community. I thought that was interesting.
I was in charge of researching about some of the fundraisers. So some of those documents, there's one where they wrote a letter addressed to Santa Claus from the perspective of a little kid, saying that the center needed help. And they also had some flyers for some wine sip events that they did. Those went hand in hand with the Artists and Models Ball fundraisers. Those pictures, the hand-drawn fashion designs, those are really nice posters.
Yeah, I forgot about those. I really appreciated the like actual designs for the costumes for the Artists and Models balls. They were very creative and just intricate in their own right. But there also, I thought that the wall of flyers was a really good detail, and that showed just the variety of how they presented their exhibits throughout the years. I thought that was an interesting detail. And the director's reports to the board, I think, were very insightful documents whenever I came across one, because it was just like a full update on how the center was running and like how the programming was going. And I feel like that gave a lot of kind of details to how the center ran that I wouldn't get otherwise. So I appreciated those documents a lot.
And I think looking at some of the similarities between the reports from year to year helped to inform even the themes that were drawn out from each of the different groups, where one of the reasons we really focused on like the resilience of it was realizing how frequently there were those challenges or questions of like, how do we gain additional community support? How do we elevate the voices of the artists that we're working with? And there was one other thing when they were talking about the drawings for the costumes. If you're interested in seeing more of those costumes, the University of Chicago has the visual archive for the Southside Community Arts Center. And so I think it's their visual resources archive that's a part of their Luna website. So I don't know what the acronym Luna stands for, but if you look that up, that's a way of also seeing some of the visual art that's a part of the Southside Community Arts Center. And it was from those records that that the written thesis class was able to pull and select some of the images that went along with the artist's profile. So there's that resource as well. I think I'm probably pronouncing the name wrong, but Matuz was asking if there were any pieces or records that stood out to you in researching the center. So I think we might have answered that question. If there are any other additional questions. Yeah, okay. Lauren is asking what's next for the exhibition. So this was going to be a part of the kind of closing remarks, but it does look like we're probably moving in that direction as well, which is fine because we knew it was going to be more of a brief conversation. But what's next for the exhibition, it actually, if you have not had a chance to see the C33, the C33 portion, the exhibition closes next Thursday, so April 29th, but then it moves to the Southside Community Arts Center at a later point this summer. And so you can visit the Southside Community Arts Center's website for more information about the exact dates. But between those two different locations, that is the main plan for the Artists and Models exhibition. So if there aren't any other additional questions or additional thoughts, like I absolutely want to thank the students for taking the time to kind of share their thoughts or perspectives on the work that went into the exhibition, the final show, all of the research and design work. I can see if there are any additional announcements that I had outside of the exhibition dates and what will happen next. I also wanted to acknowledge and thank Sarah Faust, who's Associate Professor in the Design Department, as well as Professor over the Graphic Design Practicum. I also wanted to thank Monique Brinkman-Hill, the Executive Director of the Southside Community Arts Center, Rebecca Zurak, Professor of Art and Art History at Northwestern, as well as our own Heidi Marshall, Meg Duguid, and Amy Mooney. You can visit the DEP's website for an even longer list of acknowledgements, including the complete list of students, but I just wanted to publicly thank those individuals as well. So that concludes a conversation with the curators and designers. Thank you again to the student panelists, as well as the other students who are involved, and thank you again for joining us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.